great fun place to have in Wise, Virginia, in my opinion. That we all can gather and around the arts, around food, around friends, family, and have some quality things in downtown Wise. Tonight, you're in for a treat. For those of you that have seen it, Pamela always does it just a little bit differently. It is a play based on a true story that happened in Pound, Virginia. I won't take any of the fun away from what she has to offer, but she is a former school teacher. She taught in Pound when I first met her, and she wrote this play based on the story for her students. And I will always say it was one of my favorite plays that her students came from the back of the auditorium, and it was just really fun. And I knew of the story, but I didn't know the details. And then I think Randy can help me with that. I think during COVID, she wrote it as a one-act play. A one-person play. And so she's the performer. She is tells the story of Edith Maxwell. And obviously these are true, real pictures around the town of Wise. And so we're just real excited to have her here. Thanks to Ashlyn and Eric for our pre-show. We're calling our house base as of now. And for Michelle for all the publicity that she's done for us for the college, supporting the students and doing some vouchers for them, and also sponsoring Edith tonight. So as soon as we make sure these lights aren't going to change colors like we're at a disco party, I don't know if we've had all this stuff going at one time or not, but I like it, but probably not for Edith. So we'll get those fixed and then we'll be on the road. Thank you all.
Thank you for calling me back home. And thank you all for coming out and visiting with me this evening. You know, people around here in this beautiful part of the country, we're all just one big family. And we share a common history. Well, if you dig down deep into the dirt and the dust and the ashes and the bones, our history lies right there. And it's a history filled with the good and the beautiful and the ugly and the evil. Lives was lived and lives lost. Buildings created and constructed and crumbled to the ground, most of them. You know, each one of us got a history been following right behind us all our lives. And one day, that history just catches up with us and gobbles us up whole, and we become a part of all of it, embedded in it for all time. So I'll say, let's us dig down deep and dig up a piece of it and look at it tonight. Oh, I know it might be a little bit scary. So, you know, put on your hard hat. Hold on to your heartstrings. 'Cause you know as well as me, it ain't all pretty. And it ain't always fair, neither. You can be sure of that. But you know what? I want you to see it with your heart's eyes. And that way, you'll see the beauty and the wonder and the splendor of it. Life gets muddy, doesn't it? But I want you to see it with your soul's eyes. And that way, you'll see clear that though it's muddy, it's meaningful and mysterious and mystical and magical and a magnificent miracle is what it is. Human life and all the twists and turns it takes in but one lifetime. You know what they say, life is short. But now I say, history remains. And it's older than dirt. So let's us dig up a piece of the dirt tonight, won't we? Well, you know what? You might even learn something from it you can use in your own life today. And if not, well, Leastwise, I hope you're entertained. All right. I come here today to talk to you about something that happened to me a way long time ago. Oh, very near here. Only minutes away as the crow flies. I was called Edith Maxwell back then. And my family lived in a 4-room house right on the Pound River. Oh, many a day I spent fishing off that back porch. The same back porch where my poppy took his last breath of life. It was 1935, and I had just graduated Radford Teachers College. Well, truth be known, I really wanted to be a nurse. But back then, children were more inclined to follow the decisions and the desires and the dictates of their daddies. So I had just finished my first year teaching at the Mullins School on Mead Creek, a 1-room schoolhouse where I had 42 students in grades 1 through 7. You know, at a time when so many were still destitute coming out of the Great Depression, I was proud to help my family have a better life. Papa here was a consoled coal miner and a skilled blacksmith. There were 6 of us children, born to Ann Dotson Maxwell and Trig Maxwell. 5 girls and 1 boy. Of course, at that time, only me and my 2 baby sisters were still living at the house there. Mary Catherine, age 11, and Anna Ruth, 14. Well, I had just turned 21 years old, the legal age to be considered an adult. Well, I was working and paying rent to Papa there to live there at the house with my family. And I had visited my big brother in the big city of Chicago where he lived. And while I was there, I spent my own hard-earned money, and for the very first time in my life, I bought me some store-bought clothes. Clothes back home that girls my age only seen in fashion magazines. Well, I seen how modern young women my very same age, they wore the hair all cut off short, and the dresses and the skirts all cut off short. Why, you know what? I even seen some of them wearing pants and smoking cigarettes like they done in the Hollywood picture shows. I just fooling with you now. You know, I just like play acting and doing impersonations and things, reading, writing, and rhyming. Well, anyway, the only thing modern I seen back home was legal liquor. You see, Prohibition had done ended, and some little drinking joints was sprinkled throughout all around here. Places with names like the Little Ritz, or the Rendezvous, or Joyland, or yeah, there were Shorties. Now that was right here in the center of Wise. Finally, folks had places to go to socialize besides just the church. Oh, excuse me. Well, that's just what I've done. All right. I'd be lying to you if I told you I never took me a drink of alcohol. I surely did. But I'll swear to you on my honor, I really just soon had me a soda pop, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, Verner's ginger ale, maybe even a sweet tea. the best part of all that? Potato chips. Don't you just love potato chips? Oh, I do. But you know, you can't just eat but one, can you? Oh, well, just like some people can't just drink but one. But we'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, I was young. And like any young person, I like to get out, be with my friends, and listen to good music, and dance a little. Oh, yeah, I like to dance. Da 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 da. Well, you know what I mean. Yes, I was young and feeling frisky. But I was no floozy, no flighty, no fly-by-night. Poppy here, he called me wild and willful. He'd say to me, Edith, you're staying out till the wee hours and running with boys and not acting like a proper teacher ought to act. I'd say to him, well, I reckon I'm of age now, making my own way and making my own decisions too. Well, that there's what led to all the trouble. 'Cause you know, he'd been drinking all the day long that day. He commenced to drinking early in the morning, went straight through the evening, well into the night. Well, he and Mommy had been arguing all the day long about her picking berries. See, he'd seen her putting on paints and powders and curling up her hair to go out like any normal woman would do. And he started accusing her of meeting a man out there and doing more than just picking berries, if you know what I mean. Oh, I can just hear Mommy now. She'd say, oh my word, Trigg Maxwell, if I had to die, I'd just soon drown in that river as get tangled up with another man. You're enough trouble as it is. What would I want that other man for? Answer me that. Well, I reckon that's the way it went all the day long. Well, I know you come here because you want to hear all the details of what all happened that night. And I promise I'm going to tell you. But first I'd like to tell you why this was more than just a story about a possible murder and a cover-up. Why the press landed in our little village of the pound like vultures on a dead carcass. My story was important for many reasons. And I'd like to explain some of them reasons to you first. And then I promise I'll get back to telling you how Poppy ended up, well, dead on the back porch. And my life, well, my life would never be the same. Now, I got a cousin named Edith, and she kept this here scrapbook, see? And it's full of pictures and clippings and things that was put out way back then. And she gave it to me to use to help me remember, but also so I could share with you some of the very things that was put out about me and my family and my 2 trials. And people around here in Wise County too. So I'm going to tell you, well, my viewpoint on it, how I see it. But more important, I'm going to tell you how I lived it. Anybody knows that finding out the truth about anything ain't easy. But I'm going to tell you the truth, what was true for me. And I'm going to share with you some of the things that was really put out in the press and in the courtroom. And then maybe you can decide for your own self what you allow that fine line of truth to be. So, give me just a second here and I'll just see where we might start this. Reading headlines and quotes and things and my particular commentary on it. Extra, read all about it. 2 women accused of murder in Southwest Virginia. Well, you know, even now in these current times, violent crime is mostly committed by men. And it weren't no different back in 1935, I reckon. It was even more so like that then. So the news of 2 women, me and Mommy, being accused of murder, well, it spread like wildfire across this country. And what added to the intrigue was what all the press put out about it now. That's right. So let me share with you just a little bit of what really come out of the paper. It said Edith Maxwell was a young and pretty school teacher who was apparently mistreated by a drunken father who blamed his daughter for staying out late and meeting up with boys. In many cities across America, this behavior is considered an ordinary rite of passage to becoming a modern young woman in a changing world. But in this backward country town, there seems to be a moral code dictated by men that says that females should always be in the home before dark and perform their duties to love, honor, and obey their menfolk at all times. And with that, the papers give me a new name. They called me the Curfew Girl. Oh my word. Well, this next headline, it says, media frenzy surrounds the Maxwell case. Well, just like today, news and news reports are supposed to give us the facts and stick to the facts, right? Well, I think that's a stretch of the imagination right there, don't you? Well, today they call it fake news, but back then they had another name for it. It was called yellow journalism. I guess they called it yellow because it was so cowardly of them reporters to tell lies to sell newspapers. Well, another kind of journalism was called checkbook journalism. Now, it's still used today. There was this wealthy newspaper tycoon, they called him. And, well, his name was William Randolph Hearst. You ever heard tell of that name? I bet some of you do. Well, now see, he was the one paying the money, putting out the checks to my attorneys for defending me in both of my trials in exchange for exclusive rights to my story. See, he owned over 30 newspapers plus magazines. So then he done sent out his reporters all across his country to write sensational stories designed to do one thing and one thing only: Sell them newspapers. Through the dark door of the press, my brother Earl found an exit to save me for a life in prison for a crime I did not claim. Now, I appreciate what Earl done for me. I really do. God rest his soul. But I still felt like I was selling my soul to the devil. Just bargaining with the devil. But I kept up my solid bargain to gain sympathy for my case. I done things like posing for pictures with my clothes on. Well, this here's a picture of me, the very first one taken when I was taken into the Wise County Jail there and put behind bars and looking like a maiden in distress. And there was a picture of me in the Jonesville jail where I spent over a year of my time. And I was dressed attractively, smiling innocently. And yes, there was a picture of me on a bench with a boy and a caption that said, "Love, honor, and oh, baby." Why didn't he know that boy? But see, the press put out that I was a bright, young, innocent school teacher living in squalor in the backwoods of Southwest Virginia in a bygone culture where females are considered to be second-class citizens. Well, you know what? That last part, it did give me pause. Because, you know yourself, when you're a youngin', used to, we didn't think about how we was being raised or how we was being treated. We just kind of took life as it was, and everybody pretty much lived the same way, you know. But I was starting to realize I was an adult now. And I was going to have to think about this. Maybe for a long time. Oh, my word. All right, here's the headline. It says, "Back in the mountains, back in time." Nobody could have ever thought for a minute that the news would blow up so big all across this country, especially coming from a little old village like the town. Well, this one big-time reporter, now he come here. His name was Arthur Medford. Boy, he done landed with a bang. He lambasted my mommy and other people around here with some of the things that he had to say. Now, I got to just tell you some of the things he said. Anne Maxwell, the toil-worn and scrawny-aged beyond her years mate, who had countenanced her husband Trig Maxwell's mistreatment for more than 30 years. Here's another one. Even girl children, instead of being a blessing, are considered pest critters by their illiterate, swaggering, hillbilly males who, according to tradition, are born with the inherent right to dominate body and soul every action of their meek and fearful women. You know, Mr. Medford presented a pretty different picture of me, and it was kind of nice, and my brother Earl, too, he kind of flipped on us. Now listen to what he said about me. He said, "Miss Maxwell rebelled against illiterate women folk who made fun of what they called her book learning, store-bought clothes, and highfalutin city talk. In such rural pockets of our nation, it seems to be a crime to be a female who is above average in looks, language, and education." You know, It seems like to me standing up to Poppy and standing against this idea of a moral code, well, it earned me a new name by the press. Sure did. Now they called me the St. Joan of Arc of the Lonesome Pine. Oh, I'll say now, imagine that. Imagine me a saint. I had a little trouble too. Oh my word. Seems like Reporter Medford kind of took a shine to my brother Earl, and he had kind of things to say about him too. He said this one thing, he said, he was a hillbilly who had the courage and ambition to take himself out of the rut. Well, you know, that's true. Because when the news got back to Earl, what all happened back home, he knew quite well how things could go. Because see, when he weren't yet a fully grown up man, he was only 18 years old, he too spent many a dark night with a drunken trig. And the last row they ever had landed them both on the ground just wrestling. And when it was over, Earl got up and he just let out of there, never one time to return, till it was to see Poppy put in his grave. And he only come back then to see what he could do to keep me and Mommy from going to prison for the rest of our lives, and to figure out how to pay for our legal representation. And that's where Mr. Hurst come in. You see how that works now, don't you? I'm sure you do. Oh. Okay, then. He said this, too. He said, Earl Maxwell is an entirely modern young man who rose like a knight of old to champion the cause of beauty in distress, his sister. Well, you know, I've never seen myself as no beauty, but my brother surely was my hero. And even though Mr. Medford had kindly things to say about us, he was equally condescending about the people around here. Oh, well, I'll never forget some of the things he said. It's ingrained in my brain. He said this, he said, slatternly women and gangling men who rise each day to greet the dull business of living. Oh, my word. Well, you know, we didn't have no internet to hop on back then to learn the meanings of things. And nobody much had a big old dictionary there at the house neither, where we could look up a word, even if we knowed how to spell it. But people around here out in the country, they do have one thing. They got instinct enough to know an insult when they hear it. Don't you think? Oh, yeah. And adding insult to injury. This here's a picture that come out in a detective magazine called True Detective. I think there's a TV program like that nowadays. Anyway, here's a picture of a cow on Main Street in front of a courthouse in Wise where I was tried. Y'all recognize that courthouse? Anybody know that cow? Oh, now no, her name was Amy, as a matter of fact. Because I recently heard tell a story about this, and I want to share it with you because it's of interest to people here in Wise, especially the ones who've been around here for a while. There's this young'un this youngster, and he's running around town one day, and a reporter come up to him and asked him if he knew where he could get his hands on a cow, because he wanted to take a picture of it on Main Street. Well, that boy knew exactly where you get just such a thing. Well, I'm telling you, he leaped and licked his split, and he skedaddled out of here and went on home to his farm. And then he gathered up his very favorite Mama Moo cow and brought her down there to that reporter. Well, when they was finished, the reporter said to him, "You know, son, that is one amiable cow. That is a friendly cow. Seems to me it's like somebody's pet. It's so nice." Well, that boy, he thought right then, he'd been thinking he wanted to name that cow. So he just named that cow Amiable and called her Amy for short. Well, then he went on back home, and his mom was sitting on the porch stringing some beads, you know, and she seen him coming. And she said, "Oh, now that's curious." So she went on down there to him, and she said, "What in the world are you doing?" And he explained to her everything that happened, and he smiled broadly when he got to the part about the 25 cents, thinking she's going to be so thrilled for him. No, sir, Bob, no, that did not happen. She was furious. She grabbed him by his ear, and then she started searching out a suitable switch so she could lay on some big wallowing wallops on the backside of that boy. And the very next Sunday in church, when that tithing basket went round, that boy deposited that money, his debt for his misdeeds. He humbled himself before the watchful eye of both God and his mommy. Oh. Well, you know, I've studied and studied it now, and I thought, now what would they want to do? What was it they was trying to say by letting everybody all across America see this cow? What's that supposed to mean? Does the word podunk come to mind? Well, what I've come to is this. I think there's trying to say there must be something to moo at around these parts. Well, you know, folks was feeling like I was in favor of making it look like everybody around here was an ignorant hillbilly and didn't have any sense in their head. Well, the press wasn't the only ones who was coming out with new names for me. My own folks were having a new name for me too. They call me a no-count. I call myself a scapegoat. But you know, around here, while people was gossiping and griping and growling and going on, way across there in Hollywood, Warner Brothers done come out with a brand new movie picture loosely based on my story. It was called Mountain Justice, 1937. Go look it up. You know, it was a time when it was popular to tell stories about ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. Well, that was certainly me. Oh, my word. Oh, how I daydream, because you know, I got to admit to you, I do have an active imagination. I daydream that I could play the star of my very own movie picture. Dear Director Cortez, I am sorry to inform you, but currently I am constantly incarcerated. Therefore, I am not free to take the part. Since, no, ruefully and regretfully, Edith Maxwell. Well, you know what he did. Some things are just not meant to be. That's all I could say. Oh, Lord. Now this was big. It says murder weapon explored. There's this other reporter who come here, and he was another one who liked to tell the truth to suit himself. His name was Fulton Lewis, and he's the one who told it that I killed my poppy with a woman's high-heeled slipper. You ever hear that story? Some of you know the story a little bit. That was a very, very popular rendition of the story. Well, I guess maybe he got that because in court I did admit to hitting Poppy with one of his very own big old rubber boots. But Mr. Lewis just he decided maybe he'd just switch out the truth for a while. Now maybe he got this idea because a lawyer appeared in court one day and he went before the jury and he had something to say. Oh well, I'll show you what he had to say to the jury. Do you think that a shoe like this, when wielded with enough force, could kill a man? Well, I'm telling you, the press latched on to that story. And from then on, that shoe became a symbol of my plight. And the press come out with a new name for me. I'd gone from the St. Joan of Arc to the Slipper Slayer. Well, sir, now they had another item to add to the list of the possible cause of death. Was it an axe, an iron, a meat block, a frying pan? Or did he die of natural causes, like a stroke or a heart attack? Or could it have been a woman's high-heel slipper? I tell you what, you be the judge. Oh my goodness. It's just a wonder, some of these things. All right, the next headline says, the Women's Party extends a hand. Well, you know, with the press backing me up and cashing in, the women's movement wanted a piece of me too to put forth their agenda. That being to change the law in Virginia that said that only men could serve on juries. Imagine that, a law like that. But that's perfectly true. Well, sir, there's this women's club, women's movement over in Knoxville, Tennessee, and they had them a fundraiser for me. And then two of them come to see me in the jail over there in Jonesville, so they could talk to me about my story and give me my money. Well, they was disappointed to learn that my lips was sealed as to talking about anything regarding my case. That was the exclusive property of you know who, Mr. William Randolph Hearst. Yes, sir. But disgruntled they was, and they went on home. Back all the money to the donors as well. But now later on, when I was out on bail, in between my two trials, because see, I had two trials. I won the chance to have a second trial when the first one fell apart, so it's my second trial. When I was out on bail, I was able to participate in fundraisers. Well, I'm telling you, the National Women's Party got a hold of me like it was a beauty pageant. They swirled my hair all around my head. They painted and powdered my face. They gave me a beautiful gown to wear. And then they paraded me all across the country in big cities like New York and Chicago. I'm telling you, I called it my great jail escape. Well, the greatest place they taken me was to Washington, D.C., to the Hotel Washington, to the ballroom there. You know, I was treated more like a movie star than somebody facing a lifetime in prison for murder. I really did have a silver spoon in my mouth that night. And I drank champagne from a crystal fluted glass. Why, I signed my name more than 40 times that night. Oh, I was having so much fun. Back home it happened again. When the press come out with them pictures of me, my home folks was a steaming and a stewing to see me there. They said I was all dolled up and dressed up like I was dressed to kill. Oh, now, well, it just run all over them to see me there looking like I was somebody and signing my name, surrounded by fancy folks and fancy furniture and all that stuff. While in the very same paper, the press took pictures of people around here that made it look like that everybody lived in a dirty old shack, that all the children were half-starved, that all the young girls was pregnant and barefoot, that all womankind was mistreated, and all menfolk was tyrants. And the press, they come out with a new name for me again. They call me the Cinderella Girl, while my home folks called me a triple-time traitor. Oh. Well, you know, I don't blame my home folks for coming to hate me, but what was I to do but to follow my brother's plan to keep me from going to prison the rest of my life and to pay for my 2 trials? Well, even my bail was $15,000, and that's a lot of money even today, isn't it? I reckon it is. Earl, he tried to console me by telling me I was lucky to have friends in high places. But I'm telling you, sometimes I did not feel so lucky. You know, I get back there to my lonely jail cell and I felt so dark and down and depressed. I just didn't know, it kindly made me mad too. You know, I just didn't understand. These people around here, they watched me being raised up. They watched me growed up from the time I was a little tyke all the way to where I am today. Didn't they know me any better than that? It hurt my heart to be rejected by people like that, with no understanding or empathy or anything. Oh, I get so down. And, well, you know what I do? I think about things Mama used to tell me, because, you know, she liked to practice preaching there at the house. And I think about some of the things she used to tell me. She'd say, Edith, honey, now listen. There's just 3 things a person needs to do to keep a healthy body and a mind and a soul purified and aimed toward heaven. And the first thing is, honey, find forgiveness. Hoard, host, and harbor no resentment. And the second thing is give service to all God's creatures with your loving, kind care. And the last thing, honey, and this is important. Honey, you must remember to seek joy and happiness in your life. And the most important thing is be able to laugh at your own self. Because you know only human beings, we're silly people. And sometimes we focus on the wrong things, creating more disharmony and discontent and unhappiness to our own selves. So honey, you just remember this part. Learn to laugh at yourself and see your own charades. Yes. You know, just thinking of that just always brought me comfort and consolation. Thinking about things Mommy would tell me like that. I felt like I could go on. You know, I could get up and go again. Live another day and get through this challenge in my life. Well, now, you know what let's do? Let's see if we can find some joy in the next headline. All right, it says, courtroom chaos on the first day of the Maxwell trial. You never seen such a spectacle as that first day right down here in this courthouse. People's lining the streets with the cars who come from faraway places, and others just walked in. And I'm telling you, they'd arrive early, lunch in hand, so they could find them a seat where they could see and hear good. Babies was a-crying, and men was a-spitting and a-chewing and a-spitting. Even the judge had a waterbacker in his jaw there. Children was playing hooky from school, and they was running up and down the aisle there and laughing and giggling and falling and bawling. Well, you know how young'uns are. Oh, poor old Judge Skeen. Him up there in his high seat. And him old and gray-haired and half-deaf. And he was just banging with that hammer thing and saying, order in the court! Order in the court! This courtroom, we got to order directly! You know, I half expected that cow on Main Street to come moseying on in and take a seat. It was so much of a circus you wouldn't believe. You know, it was a reporter's heyday one day when they didn't have to make up nothing. You know, that's saying something about real life being stranger than fiction. It was one of those times. Oh, my word. Oh, my, yes. Talk about charades. But don't get me wrong. No, sirree, Bob. This was not a typical day in court. No, sirree. No, most days I sat there numb as a rock, listening to hours and hours and hours of yak, 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 yak. And other days, I just spent the whole day bawling, just listening to some of the things they were saying about me. And every single day, I just used my imagination. And I'd imagine I could float up in the air and out of that courtroom into the bright sunshine. Maybe I'd go fishing in that river again, or climb up one of those beautiful mountains and look down at everything. Or maybe I'd just take me a long snooze under a big old shade tree. Anything I would have given just to be a free woman. But that was not meant to be. Oh, woe is me. That's another thing. Seems like it was not meant to be. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's just so hard remembering some of this stuff. You know what I mean? Looks like I've fallen down in the gutter and dragged you down there with me. All right. Let's us all take a deep breath. See if we can go back to finding joy. Oh. All right. Okay. Now, this here's another one. It's about a first day in the court. But now this was my second trial. This was the first day in the courtroom of my second trial. So a whole nother year had gone by when this happened. You know, nobody much of us had ever seen or heard tell no lady lawyer, yet here she was, and what a sight. Her name was Gail Laughlin, and she was vice president of the National Women's Party. She hailed from somewhere up there up north. Now let me see, it was New England, Maine, I believe. Yeah, Maine. All right, I'm gonna stop the story here for a second because I just gotta tell you something first, you know. I feel like you and me bonded here tonight. I feel like I can talk to you and tell you things now. But I don't want you going out there and telling people out there because they might not understand. You see what I mean? Because this is sensitive. All right? She looked more like a man than a woman. Oh my God. And she wore her hair real short, slick, straight back. And she wore spectacles perched there on the tip of her long and slender nose. Looked like a hood ornament to me. Well, anyway, we seen in the papers the day before, and it looked like to us that she had on a man's black suit and a black tie. And we seen it for real the next day in the courtroom. And we all noticed how funny she talked. And her voice was all gravelly and low. And it wasn't just a mouthful of what she said. It was the swallowing how she said it. Well, now, we've never seen anybody who looked like that and talked. Well, she talked like this. Give me a second here. The status of womankind here in the hills is 300 years behind the times. If they have the privilege of voting, they do not know it. Husbands and fathers regard the females of their families as much as they do their animals. A fair trial by jury is a trial by one's peers. Unless we are to go against the ruling of the Supreme Court, Edith Maxwell is entitled to a new trial with a new jury. One that includes representation by her closest peer group, women. Anything less is sheer heresy. We sat silent, stupefied. goggle-eyed in wonder and disbelief. Well, you know, we didn't know whether to run or take cover. And I believe that Miss Laughlin felt the same way about us. I'd read some of the things she put in the paper about us. My, where was some of the young people? They come up with a nickname for her. They called her Gail Laughlin Stock. Oh my word, you know what I come to? Well, it was a day when we all went home with a brand new prejudice in place. Oh, my word. Here's another headline. Edith Maxwell says visitors welcome. While in jail in Jonesville, I received hundreds of letters of support. And not only letters from all across the country, but gifts and trinkets. Well, one of my favorite things I got was a caged canary named Bing Crosby. And you all mostly know who that is. Some of you youngsters, he was a popular singer of the day and a movie star too. Now he sang, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. Yeah, you remember that? You're, all right, I don't sing like Bing, I admit it. But anyway, another thing is that I'm telling you the truth, and this is no exaggeration, and you can ask a sheriff over there in Jonesville. He'll tell you this is true too. I received visitors from all across this country who come to see me and stopped in the jailhouse to visit me and talk with me and give me their support. At one point, I was averaging 80 people a day out of the jail. Well, who'd have thought being in jail could be so social? But you know, it was a real boon to me because I like people. And I like talking to them and sharing stories with them, you know, so that really did help me. Because it's lonely in jail for the most part. And you know, again, don't get me wrong. There's nothing like your own family, your own blood, your own kinfolk, and friends you've known for all your life seems like. I didn't get to see my family much at all, because you know, it's over 40 miles over there to Lee County. And cars weren't very good back then, and roads were even worse. So I just didn't get to see my family. I didn't have no friends left. Seemed like they all just kindly abandoned me, you know. So the press come out with a new name for me. They call me the Lonesome Pine Girl. And you know what? That there was the truest name they ever give me. Sure was. I got one more headline for you. It says the Maxwells and the Dodsons were like the Hatfields and McCoys. And if you know anything about that feuding family, you know it did not go well at all. Well, many folks who've heard tell my story do not know the bad blood between the Dodsons on Mom's side and the Maxwells on Poppy's. Now, I think that the Maxwells was just plain old jealous of the wealth of my Papa Dodson. His name was Marquis de Lafayette Dodson. I love that. Well, now, it really got Grandma Maxwell's goat, because he was one of the wealthiest people in all Wise County. And the biggest property owner here of all. Well, and he'd taken as his third bride a 16-year-old country bumpkin girl is, Mama Maxwell called her. And him way up in years, like 72 or something. Oh, we debated all. They had him a slew of babies. Well, now I ain't saying necessarily it was all between the union of them two. But now he taken them all in and raised them. And I think there's something very admirable about that, don't you? Well, now another thing. Harsh political differences separated the two families as well. And if you know anything about that in your own family, you know it can be quite explosive. And some families even been destroyed over politics. Well, sir, Mommy had a full brother named W.W.G. Dotson, and he was a respected attorney here in Wise, and he served his Commonwealth for many years as well. Well, his detractors on the other side, which included the Maxwells, they ridiculed my poor old Uncle Nate. His full name was William Washington Journay Dotson. But you know what? They gave him another name. They called him Willipus Wallopus Gallopus Dotson. Well, that was by far not the worst thing they ever done to him. But you want to hear more about that story, that's for another time. But I can tell you this. You can go look up something called the Byrd Machine, B-Y-R-D, and learn you something about that problem there, that argument in their Democratic Party back then. It was pretty bad. All right. Now, I had another uncle, this one on the Maxwell side. His name was Lee Skeen. And he served as sheriff in Wise County for many years. Well, he wanted nothing more than to see me in that prison never in my whole life to get out. He was the one who hired the two untrained doctors to perform the autopsy. An autopsy that was very much discussed and debated in my second trial and ultimately proved to be invalidated. Yes, sir, right? Well, they say that he was the one pulling the strings behind the prosecuting side of my trial. Now, speaking of prosecutors, here's another name you might know. The prosecuting attorney in both of my trials has a name over there in the gym at the college. You know what that name is? Fred B. Greer. Fred Bonham Greer served as the prosecuting attorney both times. Now, he was a charming man, a real charmer. He was known to be an eloquent public speaker with a sharp mind and a keen memory, sharp as a tack. Why, he knew the name of every single juror, first and last name, the favorite food, and the best dog. He probably knew what size breeches they wore, too. You know, I'm telling you. Now, one other person that you know a little bit now. Remember that judge over my first trial? Who's gray-haired, deaf, half-deaf, and order in court. You remember him? Well, now, he was a distant cousin on the Maxwell side. And he done told that jury he will not accept any verdict of manslaughter. It could only be innocent, which wasn't going to happen, or first or second degree murder. That's it. So why I'm telling you this is you can see that I was hemmed in on all sides by a conflicting agenda and personal vendetta that all could have been avoided except for one thing. They would not allow me to take my trial somewhere, anywhere outside of Wise County. And that to me was my greatest detriment. And strike three of the not meant to be. you waited through all of this. And I do appreciate it because I thought it was important for you to know all those things before I tell you. And I promised you I was going to tell you what all happened that night, and I'm ready to do that now. So buckle up. I went into Wise that night to visit some of my kinfolk, including my cousins there over in Wise. And my Uncle Jimmy. Now, he was Mommy's half-brother. Does that make him my half-uncle? I thought about it anyway. Little did we know, but me and Uncle Jimmy would see each other again in the wee hours that very night. He was the jailer here in Wise. He'd be the first one to lock me up and put me behind those bars. Interesting, huh? Well, it caught me a ride that night with a boy named Raymond Bede. And Raymond wanted to stop off and get us something to drink. He wanted some hard stuff, you know. So we went down to a place called the Mud Hole. It was a place where wagons often used to get stuck. It took a team of oxen to pull them out. Well, there was a place down there called the Little Ritz. I think I mentioned it earlier. And Raymond had a couple of drinks of the hard stuff, and I had Verner's ginger ale and some chips, of course. And we listened to some really good guitar music that night. We danced a little and met up with some friends and things. Well, Raymond taking me home by midnight. And I went on in the house there. It looked like it was all dark. Everybody had gone on to bed. I think Aunt Ruth was spending the night out with cousins or something. I went into the front room where I had a makeshift bed out of the couch there, and I pulled off my clothes down to my princess slip. And then I went into the front room where Mommy Mary Catherine was sharing a bed to get my bed things. I no sooner opened that door than my baby sister just sat straight up in that bed and began just hollering and bawling and whining and saying, Sissy, Puppy's all drunk and pitching a fit. He says he's running Mommy off in the morning. He says he's going to whip you tonight. He says he's giving her 30 minutes to get her things and get help. Don't let him do it. Sissy, don't let him do it. Them words just run all over me. And I said to her, he'll do no such a thing. Well, I no sooner got that out of my mouth than here he come through the kitchen, just wobbling through there. And he said, I'm the man of this house. And if I say I'm running her off, I'll do it. And if I say I'm going to whip you, I'll do that too, and I'm going to right now. And then he come right into the bedroom there, and he got right in my face, and I could see his old bloodshot eyes. I could smell the liquor on his breath. And then he said, Ann, a man ought to break her neck for staying out so late. And with that, he took me by total surprise when he grabbed me by the hair of my head and he began drawing, pulling me all around the house, just pulling me. I didn't want to lose my hair, so I just went along with him. He dragged me into the kitchen there, and it was knocking into things, and things was falling, glass and china, and hitting the floor, and then we hit the water bucket, and the water bucket spilled out water. Now we're slipping and sliding, and I know we both gonna break our neck. But he never let go of my hair. Not till he seen that butcher knife on the table. And when he seen that, he kindly loosened his grip just enough for me to run back into the front room. And then I looked at him and I studied him, and he was standing there, swaying back and forth and looking down into his palm like he's deliberating. Oh, I pleaded with him. I said, Poppy, please don't stop me with that knife, Poppy. Please don't stop me with that knife. But I don't know if it was on purpose or on accident, but now that knife did drop onto the floor. But then he come right on in there after me again, started chasing me all around. And he hit the chair there at the end of the bed, and then I fell into it, and then the chair and me, we both just falled over, and I landed on my back. And I could feel something pushing into me back there, and it kind of hurt, so I pulled it out, and it's one of Poppy's big old rubber boots. Well, sir, I just began slinging it and slinging it and slinging it. I didn't know if I was hitting him or not. I didn't care. I just slinging it and slinging it. Mommy and Mary Cathy was begging us, please, both you, and stop. Please, stop. Well, the next thing I know, here he come, right down there in the floor on top of me, with his full body dead weight on top of me. And now was nose to nose and eyeball to eyeball. And then he taken his old nubby fingers there and dug them real hard into the tops of my shoulders, and it was hurting real bad. And then he took his mouth over close to my ear, like he kindly clenched his teeth, and he said, I'm gonna finish you now, Edith. Oh my word, I knowed right then if I didn't get out from under him right then, my life might be over. It was about that time I felt a power and a strength come over me, the likes I've never known before. I was powerful. I began pushing him and wiggling myself and wiggling and pushing until finally I rolled. And then I raised up, and then I ran out that door and ran all the way down the steps, and I landed in a heap on the ground in the steep dark. I was so afraid he was going to come after me again. And I thought to myself, well, I could try and go get some help. I could get up, I could run, I could get some help. And I kept looking up to see what was going to happen. And then, I noticed myself, and I said, oh my word, I was barefoot. My hair was a mess. My strap was broke. My slip was stripped all across the front there, hanging down. I was a mess. It was nobody's business, no way. About that time, I heard the door screeching open there at the top, and the voice of my baby sister floated down to me, and she said, Edith, Jake Kelly's on the way. Well, now, Chet Kelly was our neighbor, lived closest to us. And he was a respected businessman in the pound. Why, his house was the first to get running water and electricity. The bridge is named after him. If you ever go over there to pound, you might notice the J.B. Kelly Bridge. Well, anyway, I could see his form and his light coming toward me till he reached the lattice fence that separated us. And he looked on over it in a kindly voice. He said, Edith, are you all right? Do you need help? Well, I know this is going to sound crazy to you, but let me explain. Mr. Kelly's house had burnt down a few years prior. His wife was an invalid on account of it, jumping from the second story there. Well, all I could think to say was, there's no fire here, Mr. Kelly. Please go on back home to your house. It gave him pause for just a second or two, but then he went on. I could see his form leaving into the darkness there. I don't know how long I was out there, just thinking, what was I gonna do? What was I gonna do? Well, you know what? it come to me. And when it did, it was crystal clear what I needed to do. You ever have a time when the answer just comes to you like it's from up above? You just know what you need to do right then. And you've been wrestling and struggling with it, and then it comes. I know that like my brother before me, my time had come. The hard part was going to be telling Mommy. Well, I finally went up them steps and went back on into the house. Looked like Poppy retreated back there in the back, gone on to bed. Mommy and Catherine was in the kitchen. One of them sweeping the broken glass and china and all the things that had fallen. The other one come back with the wet mop, And I said to her, Mommy, I've decided what I'm going to do, Mom. When he's sober, he's all right. But I can't live like this, Mommy. I can't go through another night like this one. There've been too many already. I'm going to pack my things, and I'm getting out tonight. Oh, she got instant tears in her eyes. She pleaded with me. Oh, honey, no. I know it was bad. It was probably the worst time ever, honey. I know it was, but no, don't go. Not of a night, especially. We're all just tired, honey. We've had a bad day. We've had a bad night. We're just tired. We need to get us some rest. You go on in there and get you some rest, get you some good sleep, and we talk about it in the morning, okay, honey? Well, I didn't want to argue with her, so we just cried a little and hugged a little, and I went on back into the front room. I know I had to do something to kind of kindly quiet my mind, so I turned on the radio there. Oh yeah, it hadn't been on but a minute when Mommy hollered out and she said, "Hey, Edith, turn that radio off. Trigg don't want to hear it." Always thinking of Trigg she was. Well, I switched it off. Switched off the light too. And I went on and got in my bed. Staring into the darkness there. All I could do was review those horrible things that had happened and how he almost killed me. Well, I know I wasn't going to get any sleep if I kept repeating that, so I kindly just changed my mind. I just started repeating. This is the last night you're ever going to spend under the same roof with that man. This is the last night you're going to spend under the same roof with that man. This is the last night. Well, finally I did lull myself to sleep. I don't know how long I was that way when I suddenly heard the door creaking open to Poppy's room, and then I heard his voice. And he said something like he's thirsty and needed to spit. And then I heard Mary Catherine holler out and say she'd get him some water. And then I could hear the big old footsteps coming across the creaky floorboards. And then there was this crash. And it was a mighty crash, and we all heard it, and we all went running out there to the back porch, and there he was. His head was against the meat block. He's down in the floor. He had a little spot of blood there on his forehead, but he wasn't moving a muscle. Well, I didn't know if he'd fainted or passed out or what, so I went and got some water, and I throwed it on him. But he did not move a lick. Oh, Mama got down the floor floor then, and she took his head and cradled it in her lap. And she looked up at us, and her eyes shining like two blue lights right into our eyes. And her voice was like a siren. And she said, "Girls, this is serious. Mary Catherine, you go next door and you get Mr. Kelly and you tell him that we need help. And Edith, you go home and get Doc Sykes and tell him it's an emergency. And girls, don't you stop off nowhere nor talk to nobody. You come back here directly, you hear me?" Oh, but we was long gone. And when we got outside, we could see the light was still on in Mr. Kelly's room upstairs there. And as I run by my precious baby sister, she was bawling and hollering out, "Mr. Kelly! Mr. Kelly, come quick! Poppy's dying! Help us, Mr. Kelly! Help us!" But when I got back with the doctor, Mr. Kelly had gone down in the floor and he had Poppy by the arms and he was pumping him up and down and up and down, trying to get him to breathe. And then the two men switched out places, and now the doctor was down on the floor and we surrounded around just watching him. Now he stayed down there, I don't know how long, 5 or 10 minutes, taking his vital signs. And then he looked up at us, and we knowed by the look on his face there was nothing he could do. Mommy's voice come on in, and it sounded entirely different than it had before. It was full of composure and compassion. And she said, "Everybody, let's us hold hands whilst I lead us in prayer. Heavenly Father, take your servant Trig into your heavenly arms. Allow him to enter the gates of heaven and be your servant for all time. Forgive him his trespasses as we forgive him his trespasses against us. Allow him to be with you in heaven forever. God rest his soul." And then she said, "Everybody, let's us take a minute to say our own personal prayer retreat." You know, staring down at him, I had never seen Poppy like that before. He was so still, so quiet. No more violence, no more vengefulness, no more anger and revenge, but full of peace. It was hard to believe that just a few little hours ago he was a monster about to kill me, and now, he looked more like an angel getting ready to meet his maker. You know, I knowed right then that if I ever wanted to find me that kind of peace, the peace I was seeing on him, I was going to have to find forgiveness. Mommy had preached it many a time. Peace comes through forgiveness. You know, I think we all know the exact moment when that soul departed that body and lifted up toward the heavens. Trig Maxwell, my Poppy, he was dead. Amazing like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. Two years and 2 trials later, I lost my appeal for yet another trying court. Governor Peary denied me clemency, despite hundreds of letters of support. So in late November, at 23 years old, my brother Earl escorted me to the Richmond State Penitentiary. And it looked like, with credit for time already spent in jail and bonus and merit for good behavior, my release date would come in 10 years. But you know, the very next month, the tide began to change just a little. Because I was sent to another facility, a brand new facility called the State Industrial Farm for Women out of Charlottesville in Goochland County. And the very day that I arrived there, I got the good news that Mommy's charges had been dropped due to insufficient evidence. Oh, that was music to my ears, because you know what? I don't think Mommy would have made it through another trial. She was already so filled with stress and in such poor health, I just don't think she would have made it. So it was wonderful news to hear. And the next good thing was the superintendent there at that facility. He gave me a job learning secretarial skills there in the main office. Well, you know, I wasn't going to be a teacher no more. And I liked learning new things, and I liked being around people, and that office was busy. And it gave me plenty to do while I was there, too. Another good thing, we got us a new governor, Governor Price, and he would consider clemency, so the letters of support started just pouring in. Well, the superintendent was the first one to write it, and he said that he thought that I had excellent attitude, behavior, conduct, and he felt I would be a benefit to society with my new skills. Well, I can attest to that, because you know what? I was receiving offers from all across the country from people I'd met in my second trial, offering me a job as soon as I got out. I had my pick of where I could go. My brother was right. I was lucky to have friends in high places. Yes, sirree, Bob. Well, another thing, there was this newspaper reporter, a woman. Now, they called them sob sisters, believe it or not. Well, she was also editor of the Times Herald. Well, she wrote our nation's first lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, and asked her to write a letter in my support, and she done it. Oh, yes, she done it. And then, too, the judge over my second trial, Judge Carter, and one of the defendant attorneys, they wrote to him, too. And they said they did not think that the punishment fit the crime. Well, will I say no, duh? You think about it. An invalidated autopsy, no proof that a murder was committed, no idea how he did die, whether it be natural causes or what. They had no weapon to show for nothing either. Plus, you think about it, how come it to be that Mommy's charges were dropped due to insufficient evidence? And I was found guilty and was supposed to serve a 25-year sentence in prison. Go figure. Well, you know, when the release date come out, the first thing I done was call up the press and ask them to give me but 24 hours so I could say goodbye to my family and get out of the state of Virginia forever. And they done that. Well, the next thing is I changed my name. I took Ann after Mommy, and then I got me a Goochland phone book, and I just found the name, Grayson, Ann Grayson. So now, at 27 years old, nearly 7 years after the whole ordeal begun, I had me a new name, a new career, and a new place to live. And maybe, just maybe, the chance to start my life over. And maybe to fulfill my dream of having my own family one day. Well, it wasn't long before that very thing happened. I met a good man who loved, honored, and respected me as I did him. He asked me to take his name, and happily I done so. We was married. Yes, sir. And I became Ann Abshire, devoted wife and mother. I am happy to report to you tonight that I had me a good life. No more the curfew girl, nor the St. Joan of Arc, nor the slipper slayer, nor the no count, nor the triple time traitor. Not even the lonesome pine girl no more. No sirree, Bob. I laid claim to my own new name. I called myself a free woman. Thank you. Appreciate it. And it's your story. It's your story. That's what's so cool about it. And I don't think it's been told often enough. So, if you want me to come tell your story sometime, somewhere, get in touch with me. I love telling it. Thank you.